der LonMark. Und zwar, der nächste Referent ist Michael Ing. Und er spricht hier über PPP, also Private-Public Partnership und Smart Cities. Smart Cities sind in aller Munde. Hier erfährt man sehr viel und hier erfahren Sie jetzt ganz besonders viel zu diesem spannenden Thema. Bitte schön.
Thank you. So hi, I'm Michael Ning, and I'm here representing CMNG Capital, and also we'll talk a little bit about how private partnerships work for smart cities. So the development of smart cities have gone in full gear all across the world, in many of the municipalities across the country. And many have adopted the common belief that by adding automation, by adding data collection, that they can achieve all, the problems, solving all the problems and challenges that the growing urban habitats are having. But all of these approaches actually really takes more than just technology and data. It really requires smart planning, and ahead, and also an investment to its citizens to enable a sustainable smart city. And smart cities are really urban areas where the city and all of its assets are extensively digitized and with a lot of data collection and with a lot of automation. Delivering different kinds of services from the governments to its citizens, and more efficient use of resources. Now, there are a lot of the growth from all these smart cities is really being fueled by the movement of people from sprawlings into major cities and urban developments. And therefore, it's putting a strain on not just energy consumption, but also on resources and on the need to manage all the public services. And that's why, proponents of a lot of the smart cities proclaim that we must increase that capability to manage, to do that kind of management for these cities, so that everyone can coexist harmoniously in these cities. So without a doubt, a cheap or a simplified method or a concept to develop smart cities will inevitably fail, and smart planning is required. So by definition, smart city, in a public and private partnership, it's a long-term contract between a private party and the government entity, okay, for providing a public asset or a service in which the private party, the provider, bears all the significant risks and also the financial responsibilities and the management responsibilities that's with its remuneration and its rewards completely linked to its performance like KPIs. Many PPPs could be both new or existing services with new improvements. There are PPPs where it is completely paid for by the private party, or there are ones which the government subsidies also comes in play. A lot of these contracts, they are very sophisticated and complex because there is a public interest in these services, so that we need to make sure that for the longevity of these contracts, that they need to play a balance between what the private party is getting and what the public service is for the citizens. So in a lot of the cases, PPP contracts bundle several different phases, which in most cases the contractor is involved with every one of them. From the very beginning, we have the design phase, where they come in and they put into the initial concept by gathering all the requirements from the governments, the building or the rehabilitating, which retrofitting, the financing, which the PPP private party is responsible to bring on board, the maintenance, which is also the operation sometimes of the projects and all the assets going forward. And these are all different phases of a PPP. So to be more specific, I'll use an example of street lights, where we have smart network streetlights to demonstrate how this plays in. So many people ask, why is PPP better than buying? Because in the past, a lot of the governments, when they're upgrading, they've just went out and bought it. But they also bear a lot of the financial risk, and the PPP model takes away all of that risk. Financially, all the payments, the entire cost of the project is provided by the private infrastructure provider. And then the payments are paid to the provider only when they meet the performances. On the technology side, the provider, investigates, integrates, and also provens the technology for its partners, and then is responsible for the ongoing maintenance, the ongoing repairs, and all the labor costs that are involved, and to make sure that the entire technology and infrastructure is designed from day one, and that will enable a more closed loop, or sustainable or circular economy, if you will, design of the PPP project. And then on the operational side, they assume all the responsibility on the operation side and also on the performance side to guarantee to the government that they get the optimal service that's agreed upon on the contract. And the value proposition is very easy. It's very simple. The government pays nothing. Okay, there's zero investment costs. From day one, they can enjoy the positive cash flow for the municipalities in the shared profit. Accountability, because the technology makes the data and all the information transparent. The municipalities can see the actual performances and the savings that are being done. A lot of the streetlight projects, because of the reduction in energy costs and also in maintenance costs, leads to a cleaner environment, less CO2 output. Of course, with the more improved streetlights, there's increased public safety and also security. If we just put it into charts on the government side, you can see very clearly the upfront costs, a nice uniform platform and one-stop solution to all your streetlight assets, and then also the jump board to additional smart city technologies on top of that management software, to be able to receive all the improved performances. On the investment side for the private party, the investments are recovered through a very stable and very predictable cash flow. So it makes very good banking sense. The active monitoring, because of the new technology and IoT or whatnots, these sensors, reduces all the different uncertainties and the risks for your assets and make management of these assets much easier and without any waste. And of course, the performance guarantees and all the financial risks, can be covered by insurance policies as well. On the opportunity side, PPP is responsible for everything. A full circular economy design can be done, from the initial design of the project until the end of life of the project, where how you can recycle and reuse all the resources. Upgradability, the provider often is in its best interest to also upgrade the technology when it's available to enhance the savings or the maintenance. And obviously, it frees up all the capital and resources for the government. On the commercial side, the technology risk, if you just bought it, you assume the technology risks, and there's no end-of-life planning. You are responsible for your own equipment, and you either just write it off or you throw it away. The insurance cost is not included. There's no upgrade path, and sometimes, very often, is very costly. And all your capitals and resources are tied up at the project at the very beginning, if you do it commercially. Now, obviously, there's more complexities when it comes to building a PPP project. I'll try to go into some of these, and these we learn from experience. And I think the very beginning, it's very difficult to choose the right model, right? Because there are many ways to structure a PPP. There are limitations to what a private party can do. And you also need to look into, what are the restrictions of the country. Number two, you need to build up that political support. A PPP is completely tied to the government. So any changes in regulations, any changes in the political landscape will affect your project, which in many times goes over 10 years. It's very important that you understand who are ultimately responsible and how any changes in the political scene will affect your projects. Thirdly, navigating between all the different financial markets to find the funds, the capital to pay for these projects. Um, that is something that you need to be able to discern. What is the cost of capital, how to reduce your risks, what are the financial ways to hedge away these risks, and lastly, including the regulations, where because in essence you are creating a virtual private monopoly when you have these services, and the government must be able to say, I need to protect the rights of my citizens at the same time. How do you negotiate to find a area where both parties are comfortable with, and yet there is commercial benefits from this? There are also various conditions from our past experience. Number one, the value creation. You must be able to have a sound business model, and often that's the most difficult part, creating a PPP model with a project with the government. The governance and all the transparency is definitely required, because that is the reason why we do PPP, where it's not just the government but also the citizens who can see the performance and the promises that are delivered. Innovation obviously is the key to enable more efficiency, more resources to be used efficiently, and new technology to enable other possibilities. Um, Number four, externalities and remuneration effects. These are actually a point that a lot of smart cities vendors miss, and it is to go beyond what is within your technology, and enable not just the citizens but also entrepreneurs and also governments and also other commercials, other businesses to come in and to leverage on that infrastructure and leverage on that data, so that they can grow and make this an even more sustainable project. A lot of the large companies that we are competing with, they like to build their own ecosystems where it's completely covered by proprietary technology, and you don't have any other choice but to be taken hostage by those companies and to only play within its realms. And we know, and all the governments know, in those circumstances, innovation is not exactly flourishing. It's often stifled, because it's only what those large vendors can offer. Participation, like what we're saying earlier, we want all the stakeholders to be heard and to be able to engage into these PPP projects, and to be able to use that data and to leverage the infrastructure. The payment system and the new business model, similar to the number one that we said, you must have a very sound business model to enable this commercially. And without that motivation, your smart city solution is basically a gimmick. How are you going to pay for the smart parking? How do you want to pay for the EV chargers? How do you want to pay for the public Wi-Fi? There must be an incentive that's tied to it for it to make sense. And lastly, and perhaps also the most important thing, is the use of big data.